Here we are, Juan Gabriel Vásquez. This is your final performance at the Passaporte Festival.
Yes.
And then you're free man. And can go
Free to enjoy
partying,
Brussels.
yeah, and networking
Very
and all
nice
that.
day.
But first we have to talk about the book. You're a Colombian writer. You've been living in Paris, you've been living in Belgium too, in the Ardennes,
Yeah.
of all places.
Yes.
You were here to talk about your new novel, De Vorm van de Ruïnes in Dutch. That would
Yes.
be in Spanish with that.
La forma de las ruinas. It was published a year ago, a little bit over a year ago in Spanish.
Yeah, okay. And you also picked a Spanish writer, Miguel de Cervantes.
Yeah, he's a young writer, but he's up and coming.
It's very promising.
Yeah. It's a lot of people are talking about this book, Don Quixote. It seems to be going places. So, yeah.
It is. I have the Dutch version, and it looks a bit like this. It's this thick. And you have a Spanish version?
Which is shorter, apparently.
With less words, or?
Probably, yes. Maybe I should say something about this version I'm going to read. Don Quixote was a book published in 1605 and 1615 in two parts. And, the language has grown, I was going to say old, maybe I should say...
Outdated?
Outdated, yeah.
Sorry.
Classic. And so, a wonderful novelist and essayist and scholar of Cervantes called Andrés Trapiello, Spanish novelist, scholar, decided to take the challenge to rewrite Don Quixote into contemporary Spanish, which is nothing scandalous when you think that this is what the French have been doing with Montaigne and Rabelais, all these people. But in Spain it caused a huge uproar, a huge debate.
How do you say blasphemy in Spanish?
Blasphemia, very good. But it's a wonderful job that he did, just making Cervantes's Spanish into contemporary Spanish while respecting every complexity of the book. And so this is the version that I'm going to read.
Mm-hmm. If it was controversial, he's retelling the story.
No.
No, it's not rewriting. It's
No, the only
retranslating.
It's maybe translating Cervantes' Spanish into contemporary Spanish, but he's a scholar, as I say,
Mm-hmm.
and so he respects every turn of phrase, every poetical effects, every degree of complexity in Cervantes' prose. It's not simplifying, it's not banalizing. It is.
But the controversy, was it in between intellectuals and scholars and writers?
Probably all controversies are between scholars and intellectuals. That's what makes them so boring. It's I mean, readers out there in the world, real readers who wanted to become acquainted or to enjoy Cervantes's wonderful comedy and very profound and very important kind of comedy, they didn't care really. Mm-hmm. They enjoyed it. They looked for it.
Is Don Quixote still being read in Spain today?
That's a very good question. It's being assigned as a reading for students, but I'm not sure it's being read, and I'm quite sure it's not being understood and appreciated for what it is, which is, for me, the birthplace of modern spirit. This is a huge exaggeration, and I want to beg your forgiveness for it. But I came to the conclusion some years ago that what I used to think that the novel as a genre is the most important invention of human beings is not true. It's the other way around. Human beings are the most important invention of the novel. The novel, this thing that was born with Don Quixote, created us as individuals, as democratic citizens, as citizens of the new world of humanism. And all this, for me, was born with this book. So this is something that should be read and understood.
What were we then before the novel was born?
We were medievals, which is nice too. It's nice things came out of.
It sounds a bit animal-like, just going on with our lives and not reflecting on it. Or?
Let me put it this way. Milan Kundera, a novelist and an essayist that I admire very much, says somewhere in Testaments Betrayed, an extraordinary book of essays, he says that Europe is used to thinking about itself as the birthplace of human rights. But, says Milan Kundera, before human rights were born, we had first of all to recognize each other as individuals, to feel as individuals, to recognize that the other one is an individual with rights, with a certain dignity, and all that was inconceivable before European arts in general, and in particular the art of the novel. Why? Because the art of the novel is the first time that fiction asks us to be curious about somebody else's life in this way, to understand truths that are different from our own. And this is inseparable from everything that came after that. Democracies, illustration, the Enlightenment, I mean. All that was, in a way, the result of this new curiosity that novels put into our heads. The curiosity about the lives of others. This is very important.
Yeah.
And all this was born with this book.
With this book. In the meantime, I think you could make a children's version out of the book about this pseudo knight fighting these windmills.
Which is the one I read when I was in high school.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, we all got Don Quixote to read in high school, but you know, it was 1,000 pages long. I was a reader. I was a small reader, but I couldn't find my way into this book.
No.
So I read a children's version, kind of comic book of Don Quixote, and I got better grades than my colleagues at school. You know, one of these things.
Okay, are you going to read an excerpt for us?
Yes. So this is the first page of Don Quixote de la Mancha by Juan Miguel de Cervantes. This is the first chapter. En un lugar de la Mancha, de cuyo nombre no quiero acordarme, vivía no hace mucho un hidalgo de los de lanza ya olvidada, escudo antiguo, rocín flaco y galgo corredor. Consumía en 3 partes de su hacienda una olla con algo más de vaca que carnero, ropa vieja casi todas las noches, huevos con torreznos los sábados, lentejas los viernes y algún palomino de añadidura los domingos. El resto de ella lo concluía en un sayo de velarte negro y para las fiestas calzas de terciopelo con sus pantuflos a juego, honrándose entre semana con un traje pardo de lo más fino. Tenía en su casa un ama que pasaba de los 40 y una sobrina que no llegaba a los 20, y un mozo de campo y cuadra que lo mismo ensillaba el rocín que tomaba la podadera. Frisaba a la edad de nuestro hidalgo los 50 años. Era de complexión recia, seco de carnes, enjuto de rostro, gran madrugador y amigo de la casa. Algunos dicen que tenía el sobrenombre de Quijada o Quesada, que en esto hay alguna discrepancia entre los autores que escriben de este caso, aunque por conjeturas verosímiles se deja entender que se llamaba Quijana. Pero esto importa poco a nuestro cuento. Basta que en la narración de él no se salga un punto de la verdad. That's it.
The truth.
Yeah. Very tricky word.
Yeah, while he's lying all the time, he's just making the story up.
Yes.
And pretending that other people have written about this.
Ah, very good. You
Yeah.
have
Strange person.
you have put your finger in one of the most important parts of this chapter. Don Quixote is a very strange book. in which a voice says, en un lugar de La Mancha de cuyo nombre no quiero acordarme, in a place of La Mancha whose name I don't want to remember. So there's already this first person, this I, who is telling the story. And so for 8 chapters, we don't know who this I is, who is telling the story. And on the 9th chapter of Don Quixote, this wonderful thing, absolutely postmodern thing happens. This I reveals himself as Miguel de Cervantes. So the novelist, the author of the book, comes down to the book to tell us how he got the story, how he found the story of Don Quixote. And he says he's walking around in this market in Toledo, in the south of Spain, and he's looking for the rest of the story of Don Quixote, which he hasn't been able to find. And he sees an Arab boy laughing out loud while reading a manuscript in Arabic writing. And he comes close, and the boy, in his reading, mentions a character from Don Quixote. So he realizes, Miguel de Cervantes realizes, hey, this guy is reading Don Quixote, the book I'm looking for, because I have only been able to narrate the first part of his adventures. And so it's a manuscript in Arabic written by an Arab historian called Sidi Hamete Benengeli. And Cervantes, this is all in this book, Cervantes hires this young Arab to come to his place and translates all the whole of the Arab manuscripts. And this is what we're reading. So the most important book in my language, according to his author, was not even written in my language, but in Arabic. And the book I am reading is a translation done in very few days by somebody who wasn't even a translator. It's a game of mirrors that really comes 4 centuries before all these postmodern writers began doing the same things, thinking they were new, thinking they were up to date. All that was invented with this book, all those different perspectives designed by Miguel de Cervantes.
You read this book as somebody who has fallen in love with the book, or as a writer looking for tips and tricks and reading around the book, other books maybe, trying to find out what Cervantes meant with the book and why he wrote what he wrote and how he wrote?
Yes. Don Quixote was published in 2 parts. So I said before, the first part was published in 1605. It tells of the adventures of Don Quixote de la Mancha. And the second part was published in 1615, 10 years later. In that second part, the characters, Don Quixote and Sancho, know that their life has already been published in the first part, in 1605. So it's a very interesting game. I think we read the first part as readers, falling in love with it, and we read the second part as writers, absolutely fascinated by the way Cervantes makes literature, a published book, part of our real life, which is what we want to do with readers. As novelists, we want our books to become a part of the real life of readers, in the way that Don Quixote is a part, the published book of Don Quixote in 1605 is a part of the life of Don Quixote and Sancho in the second part.
So by this technical trick of zooming out and
yes,
looking behind the curtain, he makes it even more real and more...
Exactly. Yes, in the second part, while we're reading about these characters, Don Quixote and Sancho, and they start discussing the book about their own lives, they become so real to us that it's almost impossible not to feel you are part of the same world as they are.
Did you ever imitate or steal or copy?
Oh yes, unashamedly.
Anything from
Yeah,
Cervantes?
yes. When I was writing, first of all, my last novel, can you repeat the title in?
De vorm van Rubinus.
Yes, very good.
Yeah,
it sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. That book is absolutely Cervantian in the sense that one of the great legacies of Don Quixote, one of the great gifts he gave us novelists, is the ability to mix things up. Is the idea that the novel is able to contain all genres, all story, all ways, every way possible to tell a story is admitted by the novel. So novels can be autobiography, they can be history, they can have poetry, they can have tragedy, they can have comedy, they can have essay. This is something Cervantes did in Don Quixote. And I think without this precedent, it would have been for me much more difficult to write a novel in which you have a historical novel, a crime fiction, an autobiographical novel, parts that are little essays on history, all that in the same book. This is what my novel is. I don't think I would have been able to do that in exactly the same way if I didn't count on the precedent of Cervantes.
When is the last time that you have read the complete book?
The last time I read the complete book was in 2004, I think. I am rereading the complete book now as we speak because I'm giving this course at the University of Bern in Switzerland.
You're teaching Cervantes
Yeah.
there?
Yes. Yeah. And my students are enjoying immensely.
Yeah, because they asked you come and teach any book you like, or
Yeah.
and you picked Cervantes.
Yes.
Okay, so for more information, more detail about the book, we should come
Travel to Bern.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
we will. Juan Gabriel Vásquez, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.